Welcome, everyone, to Defending Our Health. This is the Mind Body Mastery Show. My co host today is Dr. Kathleen Stross, who is an expert in all things mental and physical health, and I'm so glad to have her here with us. On this show, we believe that healed people heal people, and that everybody has the opportunity to heal. I personally believe that healing is a choice, and that means that it's our responsibility to heal. And that also means we get to decide, and that we're the only ones who have the power to decide the extent to which we allow ourselves to heal. So today's going to be a pretty in-depth conversation with one of my really good friends and someone who has been so significant in my personal healing journey from overcoming all kinds of extreme childhood trauma. So I want to invite everyone who's listening to listen to this message with an open mind, because you may hear some things you've never heard before as it relates not only to the ideas and concepts, but to really specific strategies that I'm really excited to unpack with my friend, Dr. Kathleen Stross. So Kathleen, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure, Kim. Always fun to be here with you. Your authenticity and vulnerability makes a great conversation, I think, because I don't want to sit here and teach today as if you're in a classroom, but to dive deep into some personal experiences that maybe we've had or that we've worked with others have, and probably active experiences that are common to those who might be listening today. So it's my pleasure. I have a heart for people like you who are fighting for health and wellness. And you're right, healing is a choice. And we have never, no one has received healing who wasn't open to it and made a decision to receive it. And we have to see that it is for us, and it is for us now. And when we can make that decision, then we are open to what our mind and our body really are able to do. So that's a beautiful intro, and I'm ready to go. Let's go.
Awesome. So just to frame the conversation of what we're talking about, because of course, trauma can be applied to a lot of different things. There are a lot of significantly traumatic events that can cause people trauma. The way I oversimplify trauma is it's your body and mind's response to something that happened. Now, I want to unpack the definition of trauma and also the definition of healing. But first, to frame the conversation, we're not here to compete who had it worse or what type of trauma is worse. However, there is a very big difference in the approach to overcoming childhood trauma, which is not necessarily something subjective. So to oversimplify this in my analogy, trauma can be, for example, it rains one day and someone can be very upset because it ruined their wedding, and the farmer might be very happy because it watered their crops. So something happened, but different people can have different responses to what happened. Now, the fact that it rains is subjective, meaning for some people they appreciated it that day and for others they did not. However, for certain things like childhood trauma, that is objectively something traumatic and something, of course, no child should ever experience or have to endure. Unfortunately, because everybody has the freedom of choice, there are bad people who choose to do bad things. And unfortunately, there are victims of said bad things. Mm-hmm. So first of all, I think understanding what trauma is can help us to reverse engineer it. And I want to get your insights on that, because you've helped me so much with that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a great introduction. I think there'll be breaking down the traumatic experience is one thing. And we science supports the idea of the importance of people telling their story. Their story is important about what happened to them. But what we find is really the to blame, if you will, to blame for the dysfunction that can occur in people long term is what we call post-traumatic cognitions. Cognitions means thoughts. So post-traumatic thoughts. So what you're thinking after. Now, obviously, the rain is the trauma in your example, and the cognition or the thought of the experience for the person whose wedding was ruined is all sorts of things about, my dream date, the best day ever of my life has been destroyed. And the farmer has its own post-traumatic cognitions or thoughts, which is this was a positive time. This was a great thing. This is what I had been hoping for, things like that. So obviously it's not a post-traumatic, but it's a post-event cognition. So I think to acknowledge the power of our thoughts immediately following the event is important. And we're going to call those post-traumatic thoughts or post-traumatic cognitions. These are thoughts and beliefs that people develop after they experience a traumatic event. This sets the stage for how the person continues to live, breathe, function, think, sleep, all sorts of things relate to people and others after the experience. And it impacts how they take care of themselves, how they view and see and relate to others and the whole world around them. Those thoughts develop about themselves, about the world, and about who's to blame for what happened to them. So I think that if we dive into and acknowledge the power that the mind has, not just the physical body that might have experienced physical or emotional trauma, but what the mind does in response through these post-traumatic cognitions. Does that make sense?
It does. I think what's empowering also is once we really unpack this, we are not here to deny what happened. And I think validating the bad thing that happened to someone is or can be a big part of their struggle. So we are here to validate a bad thing happened to you, and we're here to say you can still choose to heal. That's not invalidating the bad thing. That's not justifying the bad person who made the bad decision that hurt you. We're here to say, or in my opinion, I'm here to say, a bad thing happened to you that never should have happened. However, you are no longer a helpless child. When you were a helpless child, you were under the control of a predatory adult who did a bad thing. Now you can choose to heal. Now you can decide that they do not deserve real estate in your thoughts or your dreams or your mood or your interactions. And there's a process to healing. We're not here to pretend like it's easy or some sort of quick fix at all. I'm saying it's more than likely it can be a lifetime journey, and
Yes.
there's not necessarily a finish line. It's not a linear process where there's a start and an end and then you're done. But that lifetime journey does not need to mean suffering. We're not here to dismiss the pain. We're saying you've been through bad things. Why choose to continue suffering? Why choose to keep that trauma with you? So I like your definition, and I think it applies to a lot of people. And I think it's a reframing of a lot of people's mindsets who have fallen victim to the identity of a victim who suffered a traumatic event and therefore will now forever be affected or have to modify their behavior because of what happened to them.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I'm going to hope that you hear what I say during this broadcast and always fill in those important things that those listening need to hear to soften sometimes my overly academic or overly cognitive experience. I don't mean to be, too objective, but the question is, because you're right, the first reflex for people to say is, there's no forgiving what happened to me. What happened to me is bad. And we're not even touching or talking about validating or forgiving or anything that has happened. But what we are doing is saying, is there recovery possible? Is healing possible? And is it for me? And I think that's the question. So, if you're listening and you're wondering, is it for me? Let's talk about who gets help and who doesn't, meaning prognostic indicators. Prognostic indicators means, what's the prognosis? What's the possibility that it really could be for me? Well, let's look at the factors. What impacts the benefit of treatment? Do you think it's how bad? Do you think that how bad the trauma is would dictate the likelihood of people recovering? What do you think?
Personally, I started off by saying I believe that healing is a choice, and that's a pretty intense statement, maybe, for people who have been through very intense trauma. Now, again, I'm not here to compare trauma. I tell people my 10 is your 10, meaning just because it's different doesn't mean something's worse. It's all about how it's impacting you. So I agree that it's still a choice. And here's why I say that. I say that as a survivor of child trafficking who has chosen to heal, who has chosen not to continue suffering and being controlled by the trauma that did control me as a child. And I also say that as a child trafficking survivor who's has siblings and many peers and associates who have not chosen to heal. And of course, that's their personal choice, but I'm talking about people in their 50s who are still being controlled by the trauma that controlled them when they were a child. Now, I'm not here to discount their struggle, but what I want for people is to reclaim that peace and joy. So if we were even to define healing, because when we're talking about people needing to accept, is healing for me? Well, what does healing mean? Because again, it can be a lifetime journey, but I think for each person, they also have to define what is that goal. Now, for me personally, I define my healing as peace and joy because that's something I can choose, and that's my power. And that's something no one can take away from me, regardless of where I am or what I do or who's involved. Healing is my responsibility. It's also my power. That means I don't have to wait for someone's permission or apology in order to heal. That means nothing they do or don't do will affect my decision to heal. And that means I decide to have peace and happiness and joy and bliss every single day. Every single day. I think I'm one of the happiest people I know. And that's a choice.
That is a choice. That's beautifully said. And that's it. And people will look at you and say, well, I can't have that because my experience is worse. I like what you said when you say my 10 is your 10. My 10 is your 10. The experience that threw you off the seesaw or threw you for a loop in your development and took you off the playground and into a spiral of self-doubt, worry, and fear is what it is for you. But the research says that it doesn't matter the intensity, and that the intensity or the gravity of the trauma does not factor in to whether or not wholeness, health, wellness, peace, and joy can be yours. It does not. That is not an indicator of it. So that validates what you said, Kim, is that your 10 is their 10. It doesn't matter what it is or how great it is. The second question is, do you think it matters how long ago it was? Well, you said 50 years ago. So those people who maybe or you said 50 years old, if they're 50 years old and 45 to 50 years ago, they experienced a trauma. Is it too old to heal? Do you think that time matters or is significant? I mean, that's a rhetorical question, but
Right.
the answer is no. Yeah, go ahead.
Time matters, but did something happen too long ago to heal or too recently to heal? No, I think that's still our choice means it's also our power. And again, that means there are no rules, so we get to make them up.
That's great. That's right. And that is supported also in the research that says it doesn't matter how recent or how long ago the event was. One of the interesting things that does matter is how people's thoughts and beliefs are changed after the experience. The more radical change in your thoughts and perceptions and feelings and the impact of it, the more radical the change, the greater chance you have of recovery. Is that good news today or what?
Explain that. More radical change, meaning what?
The more this traumatic experience impacted me, then the greater potential is for you to have recovery. So some people say, I'm too far gone. This messed up everything for me. I don't even know how to love. I've never had a good relationship. I've never kept a job. And they start listing all these things that happened after the trauma. that mean they're so impacted. Their quality of life is destroyed. This destroyed me. This killed me. This destroyed my family, my job, my life, my health, all these things. What I'm telling you is the greater the impact from your experience, the more likely the possibility that you can experience a mind shift to get back to peace. Now, when you asked me what healing was, I wanted to jump in and say that healing and recovery and wellness and feeling good and quality of life does not require elimination of physical symptoms. So I'm going to say that again. So if your body was broken in the trauma, let's say that you lost a limb in a traumatic explosion or experience or accident. The improvement in your quality of life, your healing, your recovery, your finding peace and joy does not require that that limb be restored or returned to you functioning. Okay?
Love that.
So this is what's important to people who say, well, I have physical symptoms. I have physical trauma, and that can't be healed. Well, healing does not require the elimination of symptoms or the absence of disease. And so I think that's what we're talking about today, is not healing from the fact that maybe there's no cancer cells in my body, or there's no, abnormal blood work, or there's no evidence or scars or fractures. It's that the inside of me that I choose to heal is now all I see on the outside. Believe it or not, people won't see your scars if you don't.
I love that so much, so much. I really want to see, especially people who have been through the unimaginable in their childhood, when they didn't understand, when they couldn't overpower that predatory adult or whatever happened, when people were so victimized, so wrongly treated. I want them not only to have the hope that healing is possible, but I want them to have the specific example, strategies to help them get there. Knowing for sure that it's possible, that certainty in their mind goes beyond hope or positive affirmation. And it hopefully can prove to them that if it's possible for me, if it's possible for so many others, it is possible for them. And I hope it's empowering, not dismissive of the person who did the wrong thing, but empowering that you don't need them to change or do or not do anything, because more than likely they won't. And why would you expect the person who broke you to fix you? Why would we even anchor ourselves to that expectation? So again, there's a lot to be said about validating the bad thing that happened to you was bad. And then you can decide, okay, now what? So let's talk about the validation part, because I've talked to a lot of survivors of extreme childhood abuse, trauma, trafficking. And regardless of the experiences that they had, a big part of their struggle today is that, so like you said, it's not a unhealthy thing to have the need or the urge to tell your story. That can be part of healing experience. But when there's this need for people to believe you, when your voice has never been heard, when your inner child has never been validated because they were told they were lying, overreacting, exaggerating, whatever. Today, that adult brain and body can still hold on to that need for validation, for someone to acknowledge that it happened and that it was bad, wrong, evil. Without that validation, I feel like they have this void for that closure that allows them to then move on.
That's a good point, and that causes me to think about, maybe I should explain the expectation that the victim has on others. During the event or immediately after the traumatic event, there was a rational need and expectation of someone needs to save me. Someone needs to come and see me, what is happening to me. They need to see what is happening to me in this moment and stop it and save me and remove me and save me over and over again, right? So the expectation of others during the time of the injustice is a reasonable expectation. They need to see how bad this is. They need to do something about it, right? And that is important at that time.
Yes.
The trauma is because no one did save you. And the trauma is because nobody did come and behave the way you needed them to in that moment. The mind can get stuck and think, I still need people to validate what's happening to me and save me, as if they're still in that moment. But obviously you're not. And I think if one of the things we can do with the mind is to use images and expectations and help your mind see that what you really want from others is love and acceptance and approval and companionship and appreciation for who you are. And that's what I guess the time has passed for there to be someone to come and save you, and recognizing that they don't have to know all the details about your trauma to see you and see the essence of who you are. Let me give an example with that. Have you ever walked into a room, Kim, and someone treated you as they would treat a person who had an easy life with privilege and all their needs met and all things good, and you were like, this person has no idea what I've been through. They have no idea. If they only knew. I mean, have you ever felt like this person does not know anything about my history? They just are treating me like the rock star that I look like I am. I'm talking about you. Right? And today, because you're well and you're choosing joy, you might say, well, that's nice. But do you think there's people who say they don't see me? They don't see me as the broken one that I am. They're not understanding me. Do you think that people want to be seen as what they've been through?
I think yes. And although that's not my personality personally, I definitely see that even on social media, where sometimes, it can be part of someone's healing experience. Sometimes it can be part of revealing or raising awareness about what happened to them. But yes, for many people, I think it's important for them to be seen as someone who either overcame or what they experienced.
Yeah, and that's their identity, isn't it? It's sort of it's their identity. That's what they identify with. I remember personally going through a divorce, and it was very traumatic for me, actually, because I was betrayed and because of the length of time that the affair went on and was secretive and so forth that my husband had. And for years and years, I identified as a betrayed woman whose husband had an affair while she had 2 babies at home. That defined me. There were a couple of reasons why. It made I wanted people to know there was nothing wrong with me. This bad thing happened to me. It happened to me. I was a victim. This happened to me. And I was trying to hold on to, I'm lovable, I'm okay, I'm healthy, I'm well, and this wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
And I wanted the world to know that. So I identified with that. But at some point, it didn't serve me anymore. Because by proclaiming that it wasn't my fault and this happened to me and I was a victim, I still wasn't getting what I needed, which was I needed to address the fears that I had on the inside. I was afraid that I was really unlovable. I was afraid that I would be alone. I was afraid that I wasn't enough. So raise your hand if you ever have felt like, I'm afraid I'm not lovable, or I don't know how to love. I'm afraid that I'll be alone forever, or that I'm not worthy. I had a real person tell me this, and so I know this is real. She said, I'm afraid I might die and nobody will find me for weeks and weeks. That's alone, right? That's lonely.
That feeling too, like it's one thing to have that fear, to have that concern in your mind, and to be living your life in such a way that you are concerned that's your reality.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get stuck in this spiral. I have this theory that, again, specific to childhood abuse, childhood trauma, all things traumatic are things people need to deal with, but there is a pretty big difference in bad things that happen to you before your brain is fully formed as a child, before you can understand what's going on, and specifically when you're manipulated, coerced into doing things that are wrong, that are inappropriate, that are harmful. So there's a lot for people to process when they went through that. And I think a big part of their suffering comes down to shame and guilt. So first of all, they're carrying this icky feeling that they're damaged goods, that something gross, bad, terrible happened to them. And even though they wouldn't say it was their fault, they still feel like it's their shame to carry. So I have this theory that we are not broken. We were disconnected. Now, I still believe you can fix broken things. It's not even for that purpose. It's for the sake of, we were not broken. You grew up from being a child. You were intentionally disconnected. If a bad thing happened to you as a child, no child deserved that. You were intentionally disconnected from yourself, from the world, from God, from love, from others. Because a bad thing happened to a child who couldn't understand it, it almost forced us to withdraw, to go within ourselves, and to try to protect ourselves in our childlike brain, to withdraw, to isolate, to disassociate. So that disconnection can be carried into your adulthood if you allow it to. And I know in my personal case, I can tend to be very isolated and very, I'm a hermit. But I have to be mindful of not separating myself too much from others or from the opportunity to heal.
Yes, that's right. Sorry, the train came by and distracted me for a second.
We're talking also about shame and the guilt and shame that people carry with them. I've seen it really impact people to the extent that I can meet someone on a social media live stream that I've never interacted with before, that I just pulled up on, a live stream to discuss something along these lines. And I can notice within them this intense shame and guilt and suffering. And when I have the opportunity to talk them through, not what happened to them, but here's an overview of my message to survivors of childhood trauma and abuse. It was not your fault. That bad thing happened to you. That bad person decided to do bad things. And unfortunately, you were the victim of those things. You should never have gone through those things. No child deserves that. And that is not your guilt. That is not your shame. That is not a burden you have to carry around. You are not responsible for what happened to you. Now you are responsible to heal. And you are the only one who can decide to heal and the extent to which you allow yourself to heal. And I can't tell you how many survivors of extremely traumatic childhood events who have been through hours of professional therapy have told me, wow, no one's ever told me that before.
Can you
I am not a therapist, but I don't know why that's not one of the first things we start with, especially with childhood trauma.
Definitely. Well, I like when you said we've been unplugged because when we're born, obviously we are helpless. We don't survive on our own, and we are plugged into our parents or caregivers. We are plugged into others. We are plugged into experiences in nature that will help us develop. We are plugged into some sort of values and morals and principles that will help us make decisions about right and wrong. And when someone trips on that power cord, literally in this traumatic experience or figuratively, we are unplugged from all source of development that gives us a running start at developing normally. And that's the development of the psyche. It's the development of the essence of who you are that happens in those early formative years. And it is the parents' responsibility and the community's responsibility and nature's responsibility for us to be immersed in healthy situations where we are developing a certainty of I have value, I am loved, I am lovable, I have community, I can care for myself, and I am whole, essentially. So we're looking at what to do when we have to solve for these. And I think that the first thing is identifying that at the base of all we feel is a fear. Okay, so you say it's not my fault. So I can accept that, but I still don't feel lovable or enough. I'm still broken. I'm afraid. I'm alone. So at the base is a fear, and identifying that. And you mentioned healing that yourself. You're right. When you've been unplugged from anyone whose responsibility it was to calm those fears, there are parts within you that can integrate that. And so the 3 I's I developed this easy way to remember 3 I's of healing that wound, let's say that childhood wound. One is identifying that I'm broken, and at the base of all of my unhappiness is a fear that's basic, either being alone, being unloved, or being unworthy. And the second thing is identifying, the second I, after identifying the fear, is identity. Who am I? And I want to pause with that question because as a healed person, Kim, if I said, who are you? Do you have a quick answer to that? I don't want to put you on the spot, but it might be different than.
Yeah, I would introduce myself in a lot of ways depending on the situation, but it wouldn't be outside of this context of raising awareness about child trafficking and healing and things like this. That's not my identity, and I don't introduce myself like that. And no one knows that about me unless they know me from this industry and this space.
Yeah. Well, so who are you is not what I do. It's who I am and what I was meant to be when I was first breathed life. Okay. So for me, let's go back to the example. So when I was a betrayed woman and I was afraid of being unlovable, alone, and not enough, I had to rebuild my identity and understand what it was. And I became this. I am a whole and free woman. Now, for me, feeling whole and free was really necessary for me to then say, and I have the capacity to solve for all those fears. I have the capacity to heal that brokenness. I have the capacity to integrate that scared child. I have the ability to put my arm around that woman with 2 babies whose husband was out screwing other people during the day or whatever it was. I have the ability because I am whole and I am free. And whatever resonates with you, if you could get with a person who can take you through the steps of recognizing your identity, that is your belief about yourself, who you were before the world spat on you, who you were before you were unplugged. Maybe I was a energetic, serving, loving nature being. I think that's what you were, Kim. I was an energetic, loving, enthusiastic, nature girl. What you were. What is the essence of you? And when I take people back to feel, like when I say those words that kind of were about you, your face lit up. Your face lit up. I mean, it does. It changes your body when you think about, what am I? What am I? So let's go with that a little bit and explore, what are some of the things that you could think for you or for others that they could identify with. You've been with enough people who are telling you their story and telling you how broken they are. And I bet you can look at them and say, I see in you a strong, competent, loving mother. Or I see in you a man with resilience and courage and the heart of a father.
Yeah.
Or I see in you the beauty and elegance and poise of a friend. So we can speak these things into others, and we can help people see them. You can say, as God sees them, or as we in our healing see them in their best self, not what they've done or what they've been through, but who they were before people wrecked it.
Yeah. Or even in some cases where sometimes kids grew up experiencing bad things their whole childhood, and they don't remember, or they weren't able to have that experience of before the trauma happened. So to those people, I would even expand that to, who do you want to be today? Because there's definitely what I could see in them, and I would tell them, and I do often tell them what I see or who they are as I see them. So if someone either was, that experience before the trauma of their childhood was taken from them, they weren't able to really experience a happy, safe childhood. Maybe don't have happy childhood memories.
Right. Yeah.
Who you want to be today. That's who you were as a child, and you didn't have a choice. You were put in that situation. Bad things happened. You didn't control who was around you, but now you can. So who are you today? Who do you want to be today? And like I said earlier, there's no rules to this. A lot of it is in our mind. And I love your approach on that, of rewiring the story of what happened to you and the story of who you are today. So I want to share a experience that you gave to me a couple years ago regarding rewiring your story. And I'll tell my memory of it, and you can add a lot more to it. But I want people to understand that I'm not one of those people that really carried the victim card on me. I met Kathleen Stross in a work project we were both working on. We got close. She got to know me, but it's not like, she's a very intuitive person and, lots of expertise in health and mental wellness. So maybe you could see more in me than most people did, but you were the first person who got to know me, and you were the first person that I opened up to about what had happened in my past. And it wasn't anything related to our work environment, but you allowed me that safe space without judgment to open up to. And I had never done that before, had never had the opportunity to do that with someone. And it wasn't something I felt I needed to do. Like, I didn't have this burning desire to tell you my story or to validate what happened, but it's something I felt safe to do. And I wasn't worried about judgment. I just wasn't on this, I need to heal my trauma journey. Doing good things in life and focused on good things. And I wasn't really troubled by it. But I know that I suppressed a lot because it's something I hadn't revisited or dealt with. So fast forward maybe a year into a lot of deep conversations and amazing experiences that Kathleen and I had. And it was one time that you were telling me about the concept of revisiting memories from your childhood, and the concept of, you don't have to go there alone because this is all in your mind. So that means you get to essentially make your own rules, and your brain, which wants to achieve homeostasis,
Yes.
peace, or
Yes.
balance, your brain wants closure, wants to close that book, wants
It
to
does.
right the wrongs. Now, we can't
It
change
does.
to you, but we can change the story in our head. This is not meant to oversimplify.
Mhm.
It's going to be really practical tips, but I want people to listen with an open mind because it's probably different than anything you've heard. So my first reaction was, oh no, I can go back and face those. Yeah, that's fine. That's no problem. And then you said something more specific and I was like, oh, yes, I see what you're saying. That's not something I'm quite ready for. And then we were sitting in your office and you were telling me about, in your mind, you can essentially come up with an empowering character, whatever it is, mythological or real, or a person or someone you feel safe with, but you can create a character in your mind that you can take back there with you to those memories, who can safeguard you, who can empower you, who can be your strength. And you were sitting there telling me about this, and honestly, I was kind of like, huh, I'm a very practical person, so this explanation I was following, but I wasn't quite sure where you were going with this. And as you were sitting there, you were saying, and for you, I see this big lion, and it's this big, majestic beast, and he's this big sitting right next to you, and he's drooling, wants to go with you, can't wait to go with you on this journey. And you went through this whole process of revisiting those memories of the traumatic things that happened and the bad people doing bad things as myself now, as an adult now, who I am, with the companionship, with the protection,
Yes.
with the
Yes.
empowerment of this
Yes.
mythological creature, or in my case,
Yes. Yeah.
lion.
Yeah.
And when I go back there, it's not about having a dialogue with the bad guy. It's not about trying to convince them not to do bad things. It's not about that. In these objectively bad situations, we're talking about children being traumatized, like objectively bad,
Mm-hmm.
wrong, evil things. We're
Mm-hmm.
not there to try to make it pretty. We are there to reframe the story in your mind. So when I went back there and I took my lion with me, there was no conversation, there was no dialogue. Myself, who I am now, was able to comfort and nurture that child. And that child, the little me in this hypothetical, in this mind experience, that
Mm-hmm.
little me knows that I'm safe. And it knows what it wants and doesn't want. And I know what it wants and doesn't want. And that lion just carried that bad guy away. There was no
Mm-hmm.
fighting or experience of dialogue. It was
Mm.
about reclaiming that power in your mind. Everything I said was a made up experience just now, but to
Yeah.
my mind, because I experienced it with the emotion and intention of reframing that story, reclaiming my power. My mind reframed that or rewired in a way where I almost, first of all, don't think about those experiences. But when I do, I smile because the lion carried that bad guy's head away. So I want you to explain that in your terms, but the concept of what that means to rewire your brain and how people can do that. Because I've explained that technique to a lot of my friends who are dealing with the same or similar things.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, it's a dragon. For some people, it's a person in their life that was safe and helpful.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
every case, it's helped people. And I want to see people with that
In
kind of.
every case, it's helped people. Way to go, Kim. Well, you have a beautiful way of explaining things, and story is the best way of explaining things. So I love having this dialogue with you because you can tell the stories that are going to be meaningful to people. But the visual image has a lot of power in our mind. You mentioned these things happening before people ever developed a sense of safety or security. A child so young that they never have healthy relationships to fall back on. This is before people can speak many times, before they have the vocabulary or the language or the understanding to put words to something. But I'll tell you, the image in the mind is concrete. It is there. It is clear, and taking people back into the traumatic image is useful in therapy with supervision, with someone, like me, or someone who does this image therapy, because it has to be done carefully. But going back into that, and then the image is connected to your body. We call this psychosomatic. The mind and the body. The psych is the mind, and the somatic, or soma, is the body. And the images that you see and that you just explained, for those in radio, if you could see Kim's face, she's smiling while she's telling you about revisiting her trauma image. She's smiling because her body was facing it with not only the newfound courage she has that she integrated, but with her protector, the lion. And she was able to integrate that into the child who was helpless, who was desperate, who was innocent. So that's the integration. That's the third eye of the three eyes that I was talking about earlier. But the mind and the image in the mind holds connection to the body. What has happened to modern day psychotherapy, in my opinion, is that they have gone way deep into analysis and thought. Overanalyzing and assigning words to experiences that no words can describe. No words can describe. Is useless, in my opinion. Using words to tell you how to think differently. Okay, when you see this bad thing, think this good thing. It doesn't work. We don't have as much power to change our thinking by substitution of one thought for another. That takes effort, that's exhausting, and you're going to train me to do that? I don't know. It doesn't make me feel good. However, going inside the mind's eye and revisiting the visual image that at first is going to connect to traumatic feelings of your body, like it will take you back there. Some of you who might be listening say, yeah, if I go back to my story, I'm going to feel it. I'm going to cry. I'm going to shake. I'm going to shiver. I'm going to have pain. I'm going to have all these physical experiences as if you were there. But playing with that image is also the key to disconnecting it from the power it has over your body. Okay, so it's almost like when we say you were unplugged. You were unplugged as a child from all things good. And you took that power cord and you plugged it in the trauma. And that was responsible for defining all your thoughts, actions, beliefs, and behaviors from that point on. We need to unplug it from the traumatic event and plug it back into hope and self and the essence of who you are and who you are meant to be. And I'm going to stick to the fact that I said who you were before life happened to you, because even if you can't remember, your mind's eye, your image, your psyche knows what that was. And with guidance from someone like me, you remember, we've done this work. You can connect to who you were supposed to be, even if you don't remember it. Because the mind's eye sees it. It sees what happened, but it also sees what should have happened. This is the yin and yang, the plus, the minus, the positive, the negative, the bipolarity of thought that maybe we've talked about before in other segments, that your brain, your mind knows what happened that was wrong, but it also knows what should have been and what would have been wholeness and health there. So going into that image is where your power lies. And psychoanalysis has overlooked that and gone into, using your thinking mind to solve problems that really you're imagining, your mind's eye holds the key to. So that's where it lies. And for me, it was a white tiger that I would take with me as I was experiencing my new identity, because I wasn't sure I was really whole and free and worthy of love and worthy of being loved and not being alone. I wasn't really sure. I wasn't really buying it, but something about that white tiger that would go to work with me, that would go into the car with me, that would go to daycare to pick him up, that would show up in an empty house with me, that would be with me, would say, yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Let me show you. And it really did help me start to see that. Let's go back to the child who, I wanted to make sure I interjected this thought because you were saying, I don't know if you've never seen or experienced healthy, it might be what you want to be today. But for most people, and I'm going to ask you to take a step back into your childhood, most children, even though they have a terrible experience, terrible life, everything unhealthy about them, can think of one person who saw them for who they were supposed to be. Maybe it's a teacher, a neighbor, a grandmother, a friend's mom or dad, someone who you knew that when they looked at you, they saw into the depth of your soul and saw you as precious and valued and worthy and good. Can you think of anybody, Kim? Did anybody see you? Maybe they were a stranger, but you're going to remember in your mind's eye the way someone maybe squatted down with you when you're standing on the street and looked at you and spoke something into you that you said, that's truth for my soul. Anything?
I remember a few instances, meaning
because I think you told me that there were. Yeah.
Yeah. In my childhood, unfortunately, there wasn't any safe adults. It's not even for the purpose of being extreme, but it is the reality that there were no safe adults. There was no advocate. There was no, person who really, who I could get close to in a safe way. But I do remember memories, experiences of specific instances. And in my case, with people who were not as bad and who did take that time, that one time they did this thing, the one time they walked by me and kneeled down and handed me,
That's what I'm talking about. I knew we did this work, even if it's a stranger. One time someone kneeled down by you and gave you something or looked in your eyes and with that look said, you matter. And maybe not for your case, but I can think of others. If you maybe you're a child playing at a soccer game and someone comes up to you and says, good job. Something you've never heard before. I think that stranger or neighbor or friend or most healthy adult around you, it doesn't matter who it is, but I bet if you searched, you could connect with the eyes of a stranger that you feel like saw you. So anyway, that's some work that could be done. And it could be to see that even then there was someone who saw me. So let's, and the nice thing is, even if you don't have a memory to validate it, in your mind's eye, we can create those images and opportunities that heal that child in that moment. So the power of what you do with your lion is, and the magicality of that is available to us as well. And in the work with the images and the traumas, we employ the power of our mind to say, it's possible that someone came and did this, and let's see that, let's watch that. Because just because you don't remember it doesn't mean it didn't happen. And we don't remember a lot of things. So the possibility exists that this happened, and so we can insert that into the image, and you can claim that as a Band-Aid that really feels good right there.
So if someone is hearing this, and I think for a lot of people, I'm conscious of this in myself. Sometimes there's a resistance to allowing a bad situation to be framed as good or pretty. I call it making it pretty. You're not one of those people who try to do that, but often there are well-meaning people who acknowledge, someone who went through a bad thing. I'm sorry that happened to you, but you're so strong, but yay, God brought you through so much. So I appreciate that. I'm personally not offended by that, but that's why I think it's important for us to validate what happened to someone for the sake of them having that validation and being able to move on. So it's not to focus on, oh, you poor thing, but it is to be like, wow, no kid should ever have to experience that. You're so strong for having experienced that. It's not like, oh, yay, but it was, well, God loves you still. Like, okay, fine. But let's not try to discount what happened. Now, in this situation, reframing something, that has to be done with intention, I think. So even just now, when you're asking me that question, I've thought about this before, probably when we've talked about it. And right now, I can think of 3 memories where, if I told the story, they're rather insignificant, but it was something just so little that meant something. They snuck me some raisins.
Yeah.
I'm just saying something so you could say insignificant, but at the time meant so much to me.
Right.
So I think I want to give people the permission that we're not saying make that bad person good. We're saying find the happy memory, disconnect it from the bad person, the trauma, the bad things. Like, we're not trying to say, yay, this was. We're trying to say, choose a memory and choose to hold on to what's pretty about it, or make it pretty just for the sake of your mind having an anchor to some sort of peace and comfort for that inner child. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that is good. And I think that it's so much more than that, that I feel like the mind is so powerful. Working with someone last week, asking them to go back and think about the happiest moment they had in their very, very unhappy childhood. Okay. So if I ask you to look back on a traumatic childhood or traumatic life and say, just find the moment where you were at your best, where you felt like you were the closest to what you were supposed to be. Most of the time, you're not around any of those evil people and you're not around any of the things, but where are you and what is that like? So I ask people to describe, tell me where you were your best self and connect to that and tell me about that. So if you can conjure up in your mind's eye a time, and you can if you try, you have to work at it sometimes. You flip through the film strips or the movies in your mind to a moment where you're at your best. What comes to mind is maybe I'm sitting in the backyard in this pile of dirt and I'm in dirty clothes and I've got this little skirt on and, dirty underwear and dirt up my legs and all over. And I'm playing with these marbles and I am having so much fun because everyone's leaving me alone and I'm outside in the backyard, in the dirt, and just having the time of my life. Okay. So that might be it. It's still maybe the circumstances haven't gotten better, but you're at peace.
Right.
At that one moment.
You're taking a simple moment and choosing to connect with that peace.
Because that's when I'm safe and nothing's happening and nobody is hurting me at that moment. And I'd like to suggest that everyone can find one of those moments. Is that an oversimplification? Do you think everyone, no matter the experience, can find a time in their life where they felt they're most connected to their self, their safest, their best self?
I think yes is the short answer. I think if someone's struggling with that, the goal here is to find peace, not to pretend like you had peace the whole time or like the whole situation was good. The goal here is to find peace. Now, I want to have you next explain why, because I think understanding why we're doing this, we're not just trying to revisit traumatic memories and pretend like they're pretty. We're trying to anchor to a moment of peace.
Yes.
So for me, it was when I would climb trees and I would get to the very top and no one was there and I was all alone and I was in nature. Yeah. It was this experience of,
yes.
I mean, in my head, in my mind as a kid, I was just getting away. But for example, nothing significant is happening. This is not a triumphant story.
Right.
But we're connecting to a moment of peace in our childhood. Why?
Why? Because We must see where we're going in order for us to go there. Finding the feeling and the image, finding the feeling through an image is going to set our direction on our target. Okay. So our target is going to be, what does it feel like in your body when you see yourself in the tree? And I'm going to see it on your face and in your body, and you're going to move a little bit. I'm going to see you as changed. And I'm going to connect that to your body and the feeling in your body when you see yourself up in the tree, in the top of the tree, having climbed it all alone. The wind is blowing. You can hear the leaves rattling. You can smell something. You can probably see yourself in that tree, even in clothes that you could describe. I was in a red shirt and some jean shorts, or I wore this funky hat all the time. I don't know why I love this hat, but I did. And somebody took it from me and it made me upset, but that was my hat, and we go deeply, deeply, deeply into who are you in that tree and what does it feel like to have that experience, full sensory, full on sensory, what I see, what I smell, what I hear, what I feel, what I don't feel. Maybe with the absence of things, nobody's doing this or this or this, and I'm just me. And the more you go into that image, the more anchored you can become in the fact that, and the possibility and the potential that peace and independence and freedom and value and worth and autonomy is possible again.
I like it. I think it's a form of reclaiming that peace because it's yours. It shouldn't have been taken from you, and it's your right to reclaim it.
It is. And let's say, and this is real examples. Let's say that a person says, but I never was alone, but I was in that tree for a moment and then someone came, or this happened, or the branch broke. Yes, but for a moment it was. For a moment it was that. And if your mind is in the habit of, Kim, there you go. If your mind is in the habit of sabotaging that peace, because sometimes your mind's in the habit of sabotaging every good thing that ever happened to you because that's the way you felt. Even if your mind is in the habit of sabotaging that image over and over and over again, we can go in to the mind and reprogram that to say, no, if my brother starts climbing that tree after me, or somebody else starts climbing that tree after me, I'm going to push them down. Or maybe my lion is going to be there and knock them down. Will they come back up? Knock them down again. Will they come back up? Knock them down again. They come back up, knock them down again. There is therapeutic value in going through that cycle of noticing the sabotage that your mind is in the habit of doing for every good thing that you deserve and have and can experience. Do you see what I just did there?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to remind people that, again, this is about you reclaiming your power. Our goal is to heal. Our goal is to help you find joy and empowerment. And yes, those bad things happen to you. I just know that a lot of people struggle with releasing that. I don't know if it's the validation of what happened or not wanting to let go, not wanting to detach. I think it's because a lot of people have not had justice.
Mm-hmm.
What they went through the wrongs have never been made right. So let's acknowledge that.
Yes.
Our job, again, is not to change. We can't change what happened. This conversation is not about getting justice, getting back, making sure they pay. A lot of people, we can talk next about forgiveness because that's a whole other topic in this conversation, but it's not about releasing people from their responsibility of the bad things they did to you. It's about you reclaiming your power. So these exercises Kathleen is taking us through is for the sake of you finding peace, finding joy. First, I agree. You have to decide that is for you. You have to decide that is your intention and your goal. With that openness and receptivity and intention, these things we're asking your mind to create are for the sake of anchoring to peace. Because if you've never experienced that, if that was taken from you, we want to give your brain that experience that it should have had, that it deserved to have. But if anyone's feeling resistance for letting go and trying to make it pretty, I want to encourage them that we're doing this for you. This has nothing to do with whoever else was involved with the bad things going on. We are not dismissing their responsibility.
This is for you to feel good again, even for a moment, and to release the stronghold that your experience has on your body, mind, and spirit. And unplugging from that being your power source, plugging into something. And for many, it's nature. So like we were saying, if you don't have that ability right now, because you will eventually, to find something positive and connect to it, nature is the magical cure. And I'd like to take us through an image using nature to see if you can. And this is not connecting to memories. This is not a memory, but this is an image I'm going to help you. Your mind is going to create, and it's going to help you connect to all the body sensations that you can experience by using your mind's eye. Are you ready? Can we do this together? Yeah. Okay. So sit wherever you are, and if you're driving, pull over. Don't do this while you're driving or using large machinery. And close your eyes or open your eyes, it doesn't matter to me. But we're going to do a nature image here. And for this first one, we'll pick an ocean scene. See yourself relaxing near the ocean, watching the ocean rolling in and out on the sand. Look at the fish leaping near the shore. Feel the sand and the rocks under your feet. Feel the undercurrent and the initial coldness and gradual warmth. Feel the sun on your face. Hear the sound of the water and the birds in the air. Feel the sand underneath you and the water lapping at your feet. Be connected to your body in this place that is fully immersive, that you can relax here in this place, overwhelmed and taking in all that you feel and see and smell and hear. Feel the wind in your hair and smell the ocean, the sand, all that there is. Aware of all the sensations that you have and the comfort that nature brings. And that's an example. Come back now and see. Were you able to feel, see, and smell? It's important to see yourself in the image. Kim, are you able to see yourself in the image?
Yeah, for me, because I love the ocean, I envisioned many memories, but memories of me sitting by the ocean. So I made it real, and I put myself into a real scenario of me sitting by the ocean, taking in the elements and just connecting with myself.
And so once you're able to do that, then the guide can say, and now see what you want to do. What do you want to do there? And I know for you, I bet you weren't sitting still there. I mean, maybe your mind says, I want to go, what? I mean, you want to go swimming. I don't want to sit here. So I would say, go back to that image and now do what you want to do. I want to go swim. I want to be free. I want to be in the ocean. I've seen you mermaid about. So, whatever each individual, whatever you want to do, because your soul, your essence, yourself, it knows what it wants to do to take full participation in this nature scene. It knows what it wants to do. And it wants to do something that's freeing and healthy for you. Now, if you say, oh, I hate the ocean, I don't like it, whatever, then you're probably stuck in memories about maybe a bad memory about the ocean. But if you can get to the eidetic or the image in your mind's eye and stick to an image that your mind brings rather than connecting it to a bad experience, I think everyone can find the peace and tranquility that comes with a nature scene. But what you can learn is, wow, there's intrusive thoughts, intrusive memories that come in and say, oh, I hate the beach. I remember that time we went and they forgot the beer and the cooler broke and this happened and there was seaweed or whatever it is. Those are intrusive memories and thoughts that are stealing the joy that I was just trying to give you. Your mind was trying to give you joy in nature. Don't give those other things power. Sometimes when we practice the image, we're aware of what our mind is doing by habit. And it's taking us away from the potentials of peace and joy that really everything I read about should have given you, could give you, it can. And with practice and with the right guidance, you can see where, again, something sabotaged that gift that nature had for you in that moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. I read a quote somewhere about you're not healing to be able to handle the trauma. You've been through enough. You're healing to be able to handle the peace.
Yes.
And I want people to resonate with that or just chew on that, because for a lot of us, trauma is our comfort zone. And that's part of the awareness of not only what you've been through, but who you're choosing to be today. We've been through trauma. That means our minds and body were put in states that they should not have been, and we had to adapt and overcome and survive. So let's all acknowledge how incredibly brave and amazing that is, and that now we're at peace. We're adults. We can be in control of our surroundings and who we associate with. And if peace and quiet are uncomfortable for you, that's your work, is getting to that place of being able to handle the peace.
Well, the dissonance or the uncomfortability, discomfort of being in your mind's eye on that beach really safe, because I don't know what it's like to be safe. I don't know what it's like to have power. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. That is valid. And that is part of the recovery. But to simplify it as much as I can, what you do next is you give what you never got. Give what you needed to get. That's what you do now.
Give to yourself or to who?
To the world. Give what you never got. Safety, encouragement, love, basic needs, food, clothes, shelter, hope.
Wow.
Hygiene, drug-free, stability. Give what you never got. Because before the healing happens and the integration happens, that's hard. So I said integrating and me healing my hurt child, because I know as an adult that once I have peace, I can take care of that. How do I heal that child? That could take some time. Don't wait for that to happen, but begin giving what you've identified you should have gotten. Give it to someone else. Eventually, you will get it back. Maybe you give it to yourself, or maybe the person who receives it gives it back to you. The healing will happen, but the process is give what you should have gotten.
I love that. And I want to talk about What if you never experienced that, so you don't know how to connect with whatever that need is? Let's pretend healthy love, just the word love, the concept of
Mm-hmm.
love. If you've never received an example, an experience of healthy love,
Okay.
how would someone then give it?
I don't know where to start because there's so many places I could start. If you are able to experience image work, your brain can see it through the work and you know what it looks like. We begin often by imaging the opposite of what really happened to us. So we begin with opposites. If this happened to me and it was terrible, then the opposite, I'm going to imagine that the opposite is healthy. And so you can begin acting opposite, okay? And imagining what it looks like for the opposite to be true. In terms of practically, that's the image, that's imagining and thinking, how do I know concepts if I don't know them? Well, usually they're the opposite, okay? So if you didn't have structure and security, safety and food and basic needs met, then the opposite of that is what is healthy. In terms of practically practicing that, getting a pet is a remarkably healing opportunity to develop safe dependence, codependence, reliance, and love.
I was going to say that my number one tip, this is not meant to sound, sad or pathetic. It's just what it is. But my first experience with love, I was 25 years old and we got a dog.
Right.
And at first I wasn't that
Exactly.
big of a dog person. But then
Right.
here's what happened. Because this dog was just safe, because I didn't second guess his motives for loving me, I was able to allow love to not only feel it and receive it, which was huge. And this wasn't a conscious decision. This is just what happened, and I unpacked it later. But I received this dog's love, and I was able to give this dog love without holding back, without second guessing or wondering if or being whatever.
Right. Right. Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it helpful? Is it not?
Right. Or is the dog going to abandon me? What's going to happen? There was just no worry, fear in my mind. And I was able to connect to love. So for anyone who can't relate, bless your soul. For those who can, I just want you to realize we're giving you somewhere to start. If you don't know where to start, that's a very practical tip. Now, I've talked to people where I've said, because, a lot of well-meaning people will say, you just have to love yourself. Well, if someone has never connected to love, they don't know what that means, and they certainly are not going to know how to love themselves. Because that, to Kathleen's point, there's a whole process, and there's a lot we could talk about just there. But I say to people, well, what makes you happy? And a lot of people, survivors of all kinds of extreme trauma, childhood abuse, most of them have told me something about animals, petting a puppy, being with horses, either animals or something in nature. Because to us, that's safe. And that's just safe happiness. So please continue. I just love that.
No, absolutely. I agree. I agree 100%. Now, the goal for you might be to learn to love and learn to receive love. You find that with animals, and that's enough for you. For some people, that's where they stay, and they stay, with the animals, and that's who they trust, and that's where they are comfortable for the rest of their time. There is potential for those who want to continue to take that newly developed ability to love and trust and feel safe and work towards personal relationships with people again. And again, it's a process, but it certainly begins with receiving the love of an animal and then telling yourself, I am lovable.
You said trust, and I think that's so important because, again, a lot of people who have been manipulated in their childhood, trust was so abused, so misused, and it's hard to even know where to begin with trust. Trusting yourself, trusting others, especially when it comes to connecting with love and trust. These are things that may be foreign concepts or very uncomfortable concepts for a lot of people. But when we talk about these safe examples like a pet, or for me, the second experience that was even more powerful was when my baby nephew was born in that hospital, and the first time I saw him,
Mm-hmm.
and there were no walls. There was no, I did not hold back in how I felt about that baby boy.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't entirely because obviously now we're talking about a human and specifically a family member and a baby, right? Much more intense than a dog. Also, something that I didn't have a preconceived fear to trust that I would love this child and that I didn't even have an expectation of this baby doing anything in return. I wasn't waiting for him to love me back. I just loved.
Well, and that's the perfect second step. So the animal is first. The next safest bet is the pure innocence of a baby and a child. And again, because that's safe, that's dependable, that's the pure essence of a child that hasn't been screwed up by the world or people yet. Okay. And you're seeing them as they are meant to be. No mistakes, no trauma, no fear. Actually, babies have two fears, of falling and I can't remember now. Fear of falling and fear of temperature, of heat. I guess they would distract. Anyway, forget that part. But but most of our fears are learned. They're all learned over time as we grow. We learn about fears, and when the child is born, they don't have any, and for the most part. And so you're loving that original essence, that innocence of the child, and that's the next thing. And when we look at reforming and trusting adults, that can only happen when we study and understand how flawed we are as humans. If we're dealing in absolutes and we're looking for 100% safety, 100% dependability, reliability, security, perfection, we won't find it. So the journey towards loving others is knowing ourselves for our flaws and for our essence and our purity. But it has to come with knowing that we're all messy. We all are going to screw up. I will, you will, and the person I choose to love will too. You ever heard that? Loving somebody warts and all? Because you really have to know and receive and understand what you're getting into without an expectation of perfection from the other person. The dog is pretty perfect, but they're going to poop on the ground and you can forgive them and go on. We need to be able to say, what's a safe man? He's still going to poop on the ground and I still have to love him. He might be a safe man, but he's still going to do. And we can list and list and list and list. We have to know and understand that imperfection in us as humans, because we tend to open ourselves up to love, but only a perfect love. And there's not one. Unless you're a person of faith. There's not a perfect love. There's just not. So that's what keeps people jumping in the game, getting hurt, and then they're always expecting, I'm going to get hurt. I'm going to get hurt. Well, you are if you say you are. But if you just go, I'm just looking around and I see this person and their imperfections and something's going to happen, that honeymoon phase will always be over. You'll always eventually learn something that you don't like about that person, or as you understand. But look at yourself, girl. Look at yourself, person, whatever. Look at yourself. You've got flaws too. they're on the other side seeing the same thing.
Right. For a lot of people like me who have either involuntarily, subconsciously isolated from the world as a self-protection mechanism, and or, just don't see the need to really connect with people. Nah, I'm good. People are crazy. I'm just going to stay in my little hermit hole. I can relate, believe me. But my suggestion is that if you don't do the work to connect to love, healthy love, real love, you won't know the difference, and you'll continually attract that toxic love or people or experiences because you won't know the difference and you won't be calibrated to that healthy, empowered state. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I think it's important, but I don't want to lose people and saying, "Oh, that's so far down the road for me." I believe in possibilities. I believe in helping you find your way back to who you were supposed to be, the way God intended the day you were born. And my life's work is to help you find that and tell you you have all you need within you and within your mind to find that connection back to who you were supposed to be before anything happened to you. And that includes community with others. That doesn't mean a large community. I don't mean community in the terms of a crowd. I mean connection to someone. I'd like to believe that, Kim, our connection together, and as you've let me walk a journey with you, has positively impacted your life in a way that your dog couldn't, right? I mean, yeah, and believe me, friends, they're not numerous. A real friend, they are cherished and few and far between. So if you could find someone that you could have, I think it makes life richer.
Absolutely.
And listen, I've kissed quite a few frogs before I found a good friend. You're a keeper friend for me, but look how many, friends I might have tried to have that I couldn't keep.
Right. So that's kind of what I mean about being able to identify what is a healthy friendship and what's not. Now, we all kiss frogs that we didn't know were frogs, to your point, right? But if we're closed off to the potential of being open to love, we will close ourselves off from those people who hold that potential for us to connect with. Because could we find it on our own? I believe so. Would it be as whole and expansive as enjoying that with someone else, having someone else add dimension and perspective and expand on that? I don't think that's replaceable. Now, I agree that if that's overwhelming, intimidating for people, we're not saying to start there. We're saying start with thinking about what makes you happy. What could happiness look like? Accept that there's a possibility there. Accept that it's possible for you to find happiness and just take the steps. I also want to talk about the role of self-compassion because we've talked before about feeling worthy to be loved. And I think that has a lot to do with the acceptance of the potential to heal, the possibility that it's possible for you, the hope that you can do that. Now, here's another concept that childhood trauma survivors will resonate with. We are very hard on ourselves. We often have been disconnected from worthiness because as a child, we were told bad things, we were put through bad experiences, we were made to feel worthless. And that's a whole other toxic dynamic. But today, as adults, for many of us, it is hard for us to feel that worthiness and to consider ourselves in a high regard. So here's how I approach that with my peers, and I want to get your perspectives on this.
Okay.
I've talked to many people that, let me give you some specific stories as examples of how extreme this negative belief, this belief can be. I've talked to adults who survived trafficking in their childhood and told me stories about how it happened. And for example, this one man who's now in his 40s and who's amazing today was telling me about his childhood of what happened to him and why he ended up on the streets and was trafficked as a child. And as he's telling me his story, he's saying, yeah, I was a bad kid. I was really acting out. You know, my mom was dealing with all these different things. So I was acting out. And so, yeah, I deserved it. I was trafficked. And I, you know, later in his story, when there was a stopping point, I said, you know, I want to challenge your thoughts on that, because I know that nothing I tell you would necessarily make you feel worthy, but he had a child. And I said, you have a child who's about 16 right now. And I want you to think about your child on their worst days. Think of the worst things they could possibly do or have done or could do. And I want you to tell me, would that child ever be bad enough to deserve being trafficked? And he just, no. And we have this visceral, no reaction, which is the correct reaction.
It is.
We reframe that thinking of someone else. We can see the logic or the lack of logic in the negative belief thinking, I was a bad kid, I deserve to be trafficked. When we think of someone else, I've done this with so many survivors. If I told you the worst things that a 12-year-old girl did, would it ever have been her fault? Was she ever blah, 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 whatever lies that person was told? And they say, no. And some of them even say, why can't I think that about myself? So I want to encourage people who have beliefs about themselves. If you were to flip that and think of somebody else that you care about, another child, whether or not you know them, and then repeat that story as it relating it to that other person, would that still be true? Or can you sense the lie there? What's your opinion about that, Dr. Stross?
I understand that when you're trying to learn to trust people, it's easier to blame yourself for what happened to you than for you to think that someone could perpetrate what they did to you or stand by and let it happen. So see this paradox of, you want me to trust people? That must mean that if people are good, then I must have been bad and they did that to me because I deserved it. So this is a unsolvable paradox unless it's accepted that we can't throw everyone in the same basket. Okay, evil people belong in one box, and then our job is to hunt for safe people. Okay, but we have to know that there are two different baskets of people. The one of the full of the perpetrators needs to burn in hell, and then the one of safe people are the ones we're going to have to learn tools and tricks and strategies on how to find those people who are safe. But in the beginning, when it's like, if you want me to really trust someone and love someone and let them love me, then I have to believe that people are good. And that doesn't work if I really want, if my perpetrators, and there's goodness in them, then I must blame myself. So it's easiest for us to blame ourselves than to think someone could stand by and let it happen or do what they did to us. And I think this idea of absolutes, and that all people, anything, all people fill in the blank, all people this or all people that, all men this, all men that. When we're stuck in absolutes in black and white, it keeps us from moving forward into the world of gray, which is really the real world, which is a balance of good things and bad things, pros and cons, happies and sads, lights and darks, smiles and tears, pain and joy. Because normal life, real healthy normal life, and the greatest stories ever told of people include some form of disappointment or suffering or pain on a magnitude that doesn't kill them, or in some great heroic stories on a magnitude that does in their life. But to get to that place where you understand that your story will never be perfect going forward. It will include ups and downs, highs and lows, and disappointments, and people are going to let you down. And that's pretty high level. I mean, I think that's the goal. That's the middle place where we see life and people and humanity for what it is. Imperfect, but trying to get there to a place of peace and joy. That's why I say again, you must give what you want to receive. We must give what we want to receive, because then we know we're pouring water on the flower beds. Then we know at least we're nurturing goodness. Then at least we know we're putting it out there, and it'll come back to us somehow, some way.
I love that. It's also a really powerful form of retribution to be that person that you deserve to have as a child, who should have fought for you, who should have stuck up for you, who should have done the right thing. I think it's a powerful form of healing, and I wish that on every survivor, especially people who have been through really intense traumatic experiences in their childhood. And I agree that it has to start within you. Until we do the work to heal and realize, I'm not asking you to complete some sort of course. There's no finish line to healing, but there's doing the work that allows you to go outside yourself and help other people. Because if you're coming from a place of being unwilling to face what's bringing you down and not having that anchor point or being able to be grounded to something, sometimes that can be a trauma response, to just continually focus on everyone else's problems and dismiss your own. So I think it's important that we start within, and that takes strength. It takes connecting to yourself or reconnecting. People often say, deconstructing things, or in my case, reconstructing things that were inherently deconstructed. So there's finding that baseline of peace and then building on it, where then you can build healthy relationships. Then you can find people that are worth investing in and spending time not only relating to and opening up, but helping them along their path.
That's fabulous. And I think it starts with a question. Ask yourself, do I want peace? Do I want joy? Do I deserve it? Do I want it? And do I have some confidence, any confidence, that I can achieve it? And as long as you have some amount of confidence, don't have to be 100% confident that you're going to be able to achieve it, but give yourself something. Like, give yourself a number between 0 and 100% confident that you're going to be able to achieve peace and joy in 2024.
I like
and
that.
And acknowledge, how confident am I that I can receive peace and joy in 2024? Start somewhere. And then lean into that percentage, because that's identifying the potential. It's not a slam dunk.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're dealing with gray. It's not, I can't give you a guarantee that you will have it completely in 2024, but is there a possibility? What is that possibility? Name it. That's all we need. That's all we need is the potential and the possibility that you could know it, even for a moment. Would you do some work if you could have it 50% of the time?
Right.
Would you do some work if you could have it 30% of the time? Yes or no? What percentage confidence, between 0 and 100% confident, are you that you could achieve it 30% of the time in 2024? Now your number's going up. Well, I'm a little more confident that I could achieve joy and peace half the time, or a third of the time. You see, now there's more hope. Now there's more confidence. So wherever you are, you can find someone, hopefully you can find someone to help you see the possibility. You have to see it. It's not my confidence for you. It's your confidence in you. It's your hope. It's your numbers and your ability to see the potential within yourself. And what if I told you that if you can find a percentage of confidence that you can have to feel a percentage of peace and joy in the next year, that I can help you find that, or that someone, the right person, can help you find that? Absolutely. That's a place to start.
Definitely. I want to wrap the conversation up with practical strategies for people who don't know where to start, and also for them to understand why. Why is healing important? I know a lot of people that are, I would use the word scared or unwilling to start unraveling that or opening that Pandora's box for fear of, well, I'm doing okay and I don't really want to mess all that up or revisit all of that, or I'm fine, I don't really need to. What would be your advice for someone who doesn't see the need to do the work? And where would you advise they start?
Yeah. Look for patterns. Most things that our mind constructs that happen to us occur in patterns. So for some, let's use these are all real examples. This person says, I change jobs about every 2 years. And they'll say, yeah. And I'll say, tell me why. And we'll figure out why. Or I'll say, why do you think that is? Well, this one, it was the boss. And this one, it was, some changes. And this one, it was COVID. And this one was just, I don't know. I just didn't get along with this person, whatever. So there's going to be reasons, but you're going to look for patterns. And if you could consider the possibility that your mind or your behavior, your attitude, or what you brought to each one of those jobs had anything to do with the fact that you were only there 2 years, if you can just look for patterns, go, maybe that had something to do with me. Maybe it had something to do with me. Then that's a reason to change, because you're going to say, I want a job and I want to keep it. I want a relationship and I want to keep it, but I change partners every 4 years or whatever. Okay, I want to change. Maybe that has something to do with me. Look for the patterns. Okay, so that's the why. If you want a different outcome, you're going to have to do something different. It's hard to figure out what it is to do. A lot of times it's inside work. So I think that's the motivating factor. If you want something different, look inside, find the patterns, see and consider that you might be a part of that pattern. The second thing is, look at opposites. If I feel bad in the moment, or something didn't work out the way I wanted it to, I want to stop and consider what would have happened if I had done something different? What if I had done the opposite? What if I had reacted in the opposite way? What if I had, instead of confronting that wrong head on and telling that person how I thought they were a terrible person for saying what they did, what if I had done the opposite and just turned and walked away? Is it possible? Is there potential that I could feel differently now, or the outcome could have been different? So you're using, again, your mind's eye to go back and replay items and or events that were unfortunate in your day-to-day experience. I'm not talking about your initial trauma. I'm talking about your daily life, What if I had done the opposite? Would it have had a different outcome? Okay. Again, considering possibilities. And the why for that, why look at the opposite, is because we just need to challenge our behaviors, our thoughts, our patterns. We need to be open to the fact that we might be sabotaging experiences in our life unaware. We didn't realize that we said, I know this is going to turn out badly. Well, yeah, it turned out badly because you were late. Maybe we're sabotaging things and we don't even know we are. The next thing is a place to start is deep awareness of your environment, outside and inside. Your body is going to talk to you. It is going to tell you whether you have a gut instinct that you should buy those pair of shoes, whether you have a gut instinct that you shouldn't eat that. Listen to your body. You have butterflies in your heart or in your chest or in your stomach because you see someone who's beautiful and that you want to be with? Or do you feel a tightness in your chest because that person doesn't feel like they're bringing the right energy to the environment? Listen to your body and all things around it. Your body is going to tell you, do I move towards something or do I move away from something? You are a magnet. You've heard that before. We are magnetic. We are electrical. What should I move to? What should I move away from? Listen to that. But beyond that is much, much more. It is listen, but test my reflexes. I don't want to, you want, again, you look for your patterns. If I want to immediately run from this situation, let me pause and think about it. Maybe I shouldn't run because that's what I always used to do. So maybe I should stay here and just stand for a minute and dwell right here and experience what my body's telling me. So again, I'm asking you to challenge your old patterns and beliefs. Sometimes consider doing the opposite, replaying it, or in real time, then go, I could act the way I always would act, or I could consider a new possibility. Connect with your body and see if your body wants you to consider a new possibility. Because joy probably lies behind that uncomfortable dissonance or friction or vibration that you feel that says, I don't know. Should I run? Should I go? Should I go forward? Should I go backward? Paying attention to your mind and your body and your environment will give you the opportunity to think and consider a new way of behaving and taking that risk into something that may be a curtain in front of joy and peace. So I wish you all courage through whatever that looks like for you to go forward into those scary places where you're unsure, and know that you're not alone, that you are worthy of love, you have value, you are highly cherished, and you are built and made for a purpose. And I hope you find it and find someone to help you identify who you are. Because I, Kathleen Stross, am a whole and free woman. And for you to know and learn this contract that I made with myself, to find it for yourself, that will get you through every bad day.
Oof. I love everything you said so much. I definitely hope this information resonates with people and gives them that hope that healing is possible. It doesn't have to be a lifelong journey of suffering or searching. This is my opinion. I think the meaning of life is to have meaning. It also makes it all make sense for those of us who have been through unimaginable, unjustifiable, terrible things in our childhood. That's never going to be okay. But when you decide to heal and help others, which has been a lot about what this conversation has been about, not only are you choosing to fight back, but you're choosing to pay it forward. And the work Kathleen has done, the amount of people that she's helped, people like me who have been able to turn around and pay that on to other people. And I know that they're helping other people. And I know that that kind of power, not only is it unstoppable, but when you accept that you're here for a purpose, a deep purpose, and maybe it's ending the very evils that you were meant to experience in order to understand how to end them, how to help other people avoid them, how to help other people heal from them, how to be an example to people that healing is possible. And that when you choose to reclaim that power, you are not only able to connect with peace and joy and all the things that you're looking for, but you're able to help other people. And that is a form of healing and closure that I wish on every person. So,
oh my gosh. You know what came to mind? What image came to mind is all of us with our strong, courageous animal by our side and the power that comes. Because so you might want to go today, type in white tiger in Google, find an image or whatever it's going to be for you. White horse, white tiger. White tiger is very common and that's a real strong one. So that's what's coming to mind right now. But whatever it is for you, print out a picture, put it near you, and then see all of us together fighting this evil with courage and power.
I love that. I think
Thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you so much for not only the gifts you've given me, that I know I've been able to do so much to help others connect with their power and find that peace and show them an example of that hope and that courage. So thank you, Kathleen, for all the work you do for the people that you've helped and for everything you've done for me personally. Thank you for the knowledge you're sharing with us today, because it works. And I hope people can start implementing some of these tips and strategies and start finding ways to heal. I know that healed people heal people. And this is much bigger than any of us. It's about what we're here to do. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, so much for listening to Defending Our Health. This is on behalf of Veterans for Child Rescue, and our mission is to ignite a passion in you to not only choose to heal yourself, but to help us heal the world, because that is what we're here to do. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you next time.